Imagine you woke up this morning not because of an alarm, but because sunlight slipped across the edge of the curtain. You pour a glass of water, crack open the window for a breeze, and sit down without that frantic, "I'm late," jolt. There's no steel cage of 9 to 5. You open your laptop, knock out a few critical tasks in 2 focused hours, close the lid, and the rest of the day belongs to what truly matters: a long walk with someone you love, a course you've postponed, a dish you've wanted to cook with your own hands. It sounds dreamy, but the 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss doesn't promise to turn you into a millionaire overnight. It invites you to live like a rich person right now, rich in the power to choose how you use your time, where you are, what you do, and whom you do it with. Tim starts with a truth most people avoid. We don't actually crave $1 million. We crave the experiences we think that money would buy. If you peel back the "when I'm rich I'll" statements, they all reduce to a few very specific feelings: autonomy, calm, mobility, meaningful work without the dread of expenses. So why not design your life so those feelings show up earlier, instead of saving them for a fuzzy retirement someday? From that question he proposes a different game. Instead of obsessing over absolute income, optimize relative income, money per unit of time paired with freedom, and spread mini retirements across your lifetime rather than gulping one big retirement at the end. The biggest trap isn't a lack of effort, it's defining the game incorrectly. We grew up with lines like, "Work more to get rich." Being busy means being important. Enjoy life after retirement. And we silently agree that our time is something we must trade for money. Tim suggests a pivot. Rewrite the rules for yourself. Imagine you're designing a new year and ask, in the next 6 to 12 months, what do you truly want to do, to have, and, more importantly, to become? Put price tags on those desires. In money and in hours. Many aspirations are cheaper than you think, especially when you detach income from location and trim the mindless spending that comes from doing what everyone does. At this step, fear usually shows up first. If you request partial remote work, try a side project, or turn off notifications for a week, what's the worst that could happen? How likely is it, and how would you recover? When you write the darkest scenarios on paper, the fog shrinks. You stop fighting a vague dread and face a specific situation, with prevention and recovery plans attached. Once you've redefined the game, the next move sounds simple but takes nerve: elimination. Productivity doesn't come from adding, it comes from subtracting. Every workday has a small cluster of tasks that produce most of the results, and a larger cluster that swallows energy so you can feel busy. If you look honestly at the last 7 days and underline the moments that actually created value, you'll notice the same pattern: a few calls, a handful of emails, a couple hours of deep focus delivered 80% of the outcome. The rest was trivia, updates, meetings with no clear aim, busy work. There's also a silent law that makes everything worse: work expands to fill the time you give it. Give it a day and it eats a day. Give it 3 hours and it squeezes into 3 hours. Once you understand that, you start shrinking the time window for repeatable tasks and batching them into fixed blocks. Email gets handled twice a day, admin once a week. Mornings are reserved for deep work. The stealthy drain on your attention is a high-calorie information diet. Every extra scroll charges your brain a tiny toll in distraction. You don't have to shut the world out, just schedule your reunion with it. Say, once every Friday afternoon. The magic is that, when you stop flinching at every ping, the long, unbroken stretches of attention you need to make real things start coming back. Elimination clears the path, but to experience real freedom you need a layer of automation. Automation doesn't mean sit still and money flows. It means using processes, tools, and people to gradually decouple your income from your constant physical presence. 3 notions make this move faster. First, geography arbitrage. If your revenue is paid at high market rates but your spending happens in a low-cost place, your options widen instantly. A creator selling to the US market while living in Da Nang or Chiang Mai has a different freedom profile than someone glued to an expensive city center. Second, the muse. A small product that solves a narrow pain and can run lean. You don't start with a fuzzy passion, you start with discipline. Build a clean landing page. Run a modest ad budget to measure real interest. Collect emails from people who actually want to buy, and only then invest in production. When the market nods, you write step-by-step processes and begin handing off to assistants, partners, and suppliers. For every repeating situation, you set a rule once so others can act without consulting you. And you stop being the bottleneck that must approve every tiny decision. Third, management by absence. Design your system so that if you disappear for a few days, it keeps humming. Only then does your business become a true asset rather than a full-time job dressed up as freedom. When the time required for the core of your work is compact, it's time to unbolt the chair. Some people do this from within their company. They don't toss out a vague request, they propose a measured trial. They name the metrics they'll own, commit to response windows, show how they'll report, and outline risk controls. They ask for 1 or 2 remote days per week for a 2-week pilot. Then put concrete numbers on the table. The negotiation stops orbiting around trust as a feeling and starts orbiting around data. If results hold steady, or improve, they expand the number of remote days. Others take the path outside the company. They shrink personal expenses. Build a small but steady revenue stream. Stack a real cash cushion. Then shift from full-time in one place to part-time anywhere. They call those blocks of time they give themselves mini retirements, small retirements sprinkled throughout life. Instead of working a long stretch and stopping once, they work in rhythm, taking weeks or months to learn something entirely new, live in a different city, or simply be close to family during a season that matters. A common misunderstanding is equating freedom with emptiness. People hate their jobs, cut them out, and then feel unmoored because nothing compelling is there to absorb their energy. Tim is refreshingly blunt about this gap. When your schedule isn't chasing you, you must intentionally pour interesting things into your life, as part of the plan. Not as a luxury perk. Learn an instrument, sign up for a race, join a volunteer project, write a book, or simply reserve an hour each morning for a skill you've long been curious about. These aren't time sinks. They're pipelines that carry your energy to the right places. If you're listening and nodding but still unsure where to start, picture a very specific evening this week. You sit down with a blank sheet and draw your dreamlines. In the next 6 months, what do you want to do, have, and become? You write it down not to tape a pretty poster on the wall, but to tie each desire to numbers and to hours. You realize that a 3-week stay in a nearby city, renting an apartment by the month, could actually cost less than your current living expenses if you step away from an expensive hub. You also draft a worst-case scenario for proposing remote Wednesdays, annoyed clients, grumpy teammates, sagging performance. You add columns for prevention and recovery, clear response windows, weekly results reports, a check-in after 2 trial weeks. Suddenly the plan isn't a dream, it's a small experiment. The next day, you scan your calendar and spot the leaks. There are meetings you attend out of habit, emails you type while a template would do, blocks of time where your phone sits beside you just to keep tugging your mind off track. You decide, for 1 week, to process mail twice a day, slash non-essential information channels, and run a phone-free morning until 10. Strangely enough, when you plug the tiny holes, your energy tank stops dripping. With 2 or 3 real hours of focus, you complete the heart of a day's work. With a few real free hours reclaimed, you devote 1 slice to a small muse. You don't write a thick business plan. You craft a tidy landing page, sharpen 1 message for 1 specific group, and spend a modest budget to see whether they actually care. You don't rush to produce. You wait for numbers to speak. If click-through and sign-ups look promising, you move. If not, you change angles, switch products, or drop it and keep the lesson. Once the market turns the light green, you write the operating steps, from customer replies, packaging, shipping to aftercare, and bring on a part-time assistant to own the repetitive parts. You review the core metrics on a cadence and adjust, while everyday decisions follow the rules you set. The fascinating part is that revenue doesn't always spike immediately, but your self-determination climbs fast, and that's what you were after all along. Alongside these moves, you test a negotiation with your workplace. You pick a relatively calm patch in the quarter and propose a 2-week remote trial with clear goals, firm response windows, and end-of-day reporting. You don't say, "I feel more comfortable at home." You say, "I will deliver A and B, and if I don't, I'll revert to the old arrangement." 2 weeks pass. You compare the numbers. If things improved or held steady, you ask to extend. Sometimes a single day away from the office each week is enough to shift your life's rhythm. With time, you start playing the geography advantage. Not everyone can bounce around constantly, but many people can carve out 3 to 4 week blocks in a place that costs less and breathes easier with better light. You work mornings in a quiet cafe, walk by the sea in the afternoon, and learn a new skill at night. You realize that the feeling of being rich arrives not with a number in your bank account but with a schedule you drew yourself. You also see that what you want to accumulate isn't only money, it's the ability to choose. After a few mini retirements, going back to the old calendar doesn't feel like the only thing you can do anymore. Of course, there's always a whisper on the road. Don't dream. Don't deviate. Just stay busy like everyone else, it's safer. But we've all met this truth. Busy does not equal important. Very often, busyness is a polite way to avoid the thing that actually matters, the hard negotiation. The request for a trial. The first market test. When you place your energy on the right fulcrum, the rest tidies itself. It isn't magic, it's the geometry of life. If you've made it this far, a small intention is probably blinking inside you. Don't wait for a more perfect condition. Tonight, draw a simple dream line. Tomorrow, try one tiny habit to reclaim time. This weekend, finalize the plan for a remote work pilot. Next week, cast your first net to catch a market signal for your muse. No one else will petition for your freedom. It's a right you grant yourself through repeated, correct choices. The 4-hour workweek is not a hymn to laziness, it's a call to disciplined choosing. When you consume less noise and create more value. When you shrink the number of tiny decisions and expand the few big ones. When you step out with a measured experiment, life begins to turn in your direction. Freedom doesn't wait for retirement. It starts on the morning you realize you're no longer being pulled along, you're holding the wheel. If these ideas helped, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episodes. I'll keep sharing stories and concrete guides on how to validate an idea in 7 days. How to write processes and hand off without drop-offs. And how to plan your first mini retirement that might even cost less than staying home. For now, before you close this video,